story today at the Daily Caller. Glad this doesn't happen in Idaho. A sheriff in Texas is listed in critical condition. A drunk illegal immigrant struck and critically injured a Texas sheriff in a collision over the weekend. Oscar Samaron, 42, was in the process of fleeing another hit and run when he collided. Oh, so there's not just one accident, but there's a second. When he collided with Denton County Sheriff Jim Terry. The sheriff was off duty but on his way to work on his motorcycle, reports the Dallas Morning News. The United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement issued a hold on Samaran for his illegal status before the events. Before the events. The sheriff received injuries including multiple broken bones. He had an operation Tuesday and is scheduled to undergo 2 more surgeries today and Thursday. Samaran was eventually chased down and arrested. He faces charges for intoxication and assault with a vehicle, causing serious bodily injury. Samaran was at fault in the 2 hit-and-runs Sunday evening, the last of which involved the sheriff. But what the heck? We got to do it to make them feel better about themselves and give them another bottle. There's a story out today in the Washington Times. When we keep hearing that 30-some thousand people are killed in the United States every year because of firearms, got to remember a lot of those are accidental discharges or suicides, and the actual number of homicides is just a few thousand. There are 88,000 deaths, nearly 3 times as many in this country, related to alcohol every year, and yet liberals would like to ban guns, but they want to keep sipping their Cabernet and telling you that all is well. You're up next at 9:45. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX.
Good morning, everyone. Bill, yesterday the FBI chief disgraced himself. He has to have a good salary with great benefits. So I wonder why he let Hillary off the hook. The only thing I could think of would be that maybe the Clintons have something on him where he could be blackmailed.
Well, the Russians have something on her, I guess, where she could be blackmailed, according to what we know about who could be looking at all of the various correspondence that she didn't protect. Thank you much for the call. 946, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Hillary's zombie theory of immigration. This comes from the Washington Times today. The notion that immigration is purely an economic issue has taken on a life of its own. A writer by the name of Robert W. Mary. I guess he makes merry, right, when he's not at work. He says Greg Ip of the Wall Street Journal had a provocative piece in the paper last week in which he debunks the myth, as myth it surely is, that economic considerations drive most of the opposition to the country's immigration policies. The current backlash against immigration, he suggests, has less to do with jobs and wages and more to do with concerns about national identity and control of borders. And once again, the people who shout most that we need to have open borders live behind fences themselves, including the president and perhaps the next president. This zombie theory undergirds Hillary Clinton's view of the issue. As Mr. Ip, the writer at the Wall Street Journal, points out, the presidential nominee typically explains the success of Donald Trump's anti-immigration stance by saying such things as, quote, "These are hard times that folks are going through," unquote. Now, that may be true, but what Mrs. Clinton doesn't seem to get is the underlying cultural force of the issue. Trump does. It's about culture and assimilation, as Mr. Ip puts it. And I know one thing today, that if it wasn't for one drunken illegal immigrant, there'd be a sheriff in Texas who'd be on the job right now and not in surgery. But again, we keep hearing from liberals that these are acceptable losses because, illegal immigration is the right thing to do. It makes us feel better. I get a good butterfly feeling in my tummy. Again, I will reiterate this, and I keep bringing this up. Never forget this. If you have 20 children shot in a school at Newtown, Connecticut, liberals will tell you that 1 is too many. If you have 49 homosexuals killed on a dance floor in Orlando, Florida, liberals will tell you 1 is too many. But a sheriff seriously injured or killed in Texas, we wouldn't want to insult the illegal aliens by making them go home. Kate Steinle's father was appearing last night on the O'Reilly Factor on Fox News. You may remember her name. Kate Steinle was a beautiful young woman walking along a promenade in San Francisco when an illegal alien deported 6 or 7 times previously shot and killed her for no reason at all? Well, Kate's Law is being voted on, I believe, today in the U.S. Senate. Kate's Law says that those cities that provide sanctuaries for law breaking illegal aliens will lose their federal funding if they continue to do this. This is her father, Jim Steinle, speaking with Bill O'Reilly last night on the Fox News Channel on the O'Reilly Factor.
This has been tough. The heartache and the grief and the reminders every day. It's been a tough road. But as I'd mentioned prior, we're strong in our faith, and it's gotten us through it, and we're moving forward.
What would you like to see the senators do regarding Kate's Law? I said last week, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I can't imagine anybody voting against Kate's Law because it protects all Americans, and it at least gives the authorities a quick resolution to people who come back after being deported. We're talking aggravated felons. We're not talking about people trying to sneak in here and paint a house. So what do you want the senators to do, Mr. Steinle?
Well, the senators were elected to do two things, and that was to serve and protect the citizens of the United States. And the protect part of it kind of fell through the cracks when it came to Kate. But Bill, this is not about Kate, this is about humanity, and we feel that Kate's Law, if passed, will save lives, and if one life is saved due to Kate's Law, then Kate's life was not in vain.
I wonder, if you wore an INS hat into like Costco on any given day, would you see a road rally in the parking lot as half the customers were trying to escape? You're on the air with about 10 minutes to go before 10 o'clock on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bill, that guy that was losing his chickens from the wild animals. I remember years ago we had a problem with fox, and we used to drown them out with a 500-gallon barrel of water and get them that way when they come out of the hole. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. We must be on like a half-hour delay this morning. 9:51, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 66 right now and just a few minutes away from 10 o'clock. Pretty much wrapping up the show and down to the stretch run today. Connecticut, by the way, is going to be registering voters at its Department of Motor Vehicles. In other words, so they can, in time for the election this year, make sure that they have a number of illegal aliens who will be sure to vote for the Democrats. The 2014 Connecticut governor's race was decided by about 30,000 votes, 4 years earlier by just 6,000. So it's a concern for many Republicans that the Connecticut Department of Motor Vehicles, which recently misidentified more than 50,000 people for having unpaid taxes on vehicles, will be in charge of voter registration. So they can't even run the DMV, but now they're going to be registering voters. Well, he looked like he might be an American. He smiled at me after all, so I figured he was Anyway, if you misidentify, one legislator said, 30,000 voters, that's more than enough to swing an election. As time goes by and the state sees the difficulties and dangers of this, I hope they will at least postpone it. The DMV is still coping with regular duties of registering cars and issuing driver's licenses, and that's been a catastrophe. And yet, when we talked to Kelton Hatch earlier, there's a fine example of government being responsive to the public. Government going out of its way to be responsive to the public. Why is it, though, that so much of government refuses to be responsive to the government or to the people? There's a piece today at Washington Times about how many firearms various federal agencies own in this country. I mean, this is astounding to me. What are they planning to do to you? That's the next question. What is it about you that you become such a threat to them, and that they no longer can listen to you, and they're going to just dictate, and apparently they're going to shoot us all if you don't agree with what they're doing? This is from, as I say, Washington Times, a writer by the name of Adam Andrzejewski. And listen to this first paragraph, and it tells you what's going on here and how they're trying to hide it. Women's sanitary pads purchased for the federal prison system and coated as body armor. Cable television purchased by the Coast Guard and $179,000 spent by the Environmental Protection Agency on copiers, both of which were coated as guns. Veterans Affairs procurement in excess of $31,000 in assorted bread, coated as guns through 30 millimeters. On Wednesday, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform convenes a hearing with the Bureau of Prisons and other agencies regarding their inventory and accounting practices for firearms and ammunition. Why are there $173,000 in women's jumpers, sanitary pads, sheets, pillowcases, inmate clothes and shoes, and various beauty supplies tagged as body armor in the prison checkbook? Did the federal prisons really purchase $1.4 million in military chemical weapons? Wow. Our organization had opened the books recently released an oversight report titled The Militarization of America, quantifying the size, scope, and power of 67 non-military federal agencies, which spent $1.48 billion on guns, ammo, and military-style equipment over the last 10 years. We also found that there are now more federal officers with arrest and firearms power, over 200,000, than U.S. Marines at 182,000. Ouch. So the question is, why? 9:54, you're up next. You're on KLIX.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. The reason they're loading up on all the weapons and ammunition and everything for all these bureau rats is the bureau rats don't like people, free American citizens, saying, wait a minute, you're breaking the law.
Yeah, well, and you can be a very big lawbreaker and get away with it, as we've learned in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, especially if you're an old snag running for president.
Thank you much for the telephone call. You're up next. You're on the air at 9:55 on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. You know, this very thing is what started the first ammunition dumping, where we couldn't find any ammunition when the government was buying it up and having ATF agents go out and just buying everything up. But, you know, I think they know what they're doing. Everybody says that they're idiots. They're not. They know what they're doing. They know what the outcome's going to be, and they're preparing for it. But, you know, I hope they have the stomach for it.
There is a fellow that I've seen online a few times. A friend of mine sends me video. He's a preacher, and he lives down in the Ozark Mountains, but apparently has some experience in special operations. And this guy says in his videos that the U.S. military would never turn on the American people. So if the government is aware of that the men in the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Air Force will not turn on their fellow Americans, then I guess they feel, well, what we'll do instead is we'll arm all of the bureaucrats in the EPA, the FDA, the USDA, Bureau of Prisons, and maybe they'll turn on the American people when they're ordered to do it.
Well, that's what they're hoping for. You know, and the first time around, all the bullets disappeared. We couldn't even buy them while our tax money was buying them all up. But again, will they have the stomach for it? They don't have the training like the military does. Do they have the stomach for it?
Well, I brought this up last week. There was a fellow out in California a couple of years ago, and through some special circumstances, his children had not been to a regular public school in a while, although they were being homeschooled. But the whole story had fallen through the cracks, so the school put out a warrant, and a SWAT team from the Department of Education kicked down his front door and came in ready with almost to guns a-blazing. Now, they are ready. They are willing to do it. They're doing it already.
Yeah, well, I guess then we as people need to be ready to step up, because when somebody pushes back, it's a different story. When they come in guns up and they think they're okay, then it's fine. But when something's leveled at them and coming back at them, it's going to be a different story. But, and that's why they're trying to get rid of guns. We all know why the Second Amendment is around. It's not for hunting. It's not just for personal protection. It's
right.
For protection of the Constitution.
And I thank you for the telephone call. We've got to wrap up that Second Amendment, which, references the militia. Militias weren't known necessarily as hunter-gatherers. It's for self-defense, and that militia was to defend us against the crown. 9:58, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. The country is going to split into many different components. We will not have one United States of America, I believe, in another decade. It'll happen that soon. In fact, if you have not yet done it, I do a little pre-show commentary most days at my Facebook page, and that was part of the subject of this morning's commentary, that certain corners of the country are going to become independent and get away from all of this. God willing, the creek don't rise. I get to do this all over again tomorrow morning right here between 8 and 10 o'clock on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. News is next.